The Galactic Empire was vast, spanning thousands of systems, ruled by an iron-fisted elite who saw themselves as the rightful masters of the universe. For centuries, they had crushed rebellions, silenced dissidents, and subjugated weaker species, believing themselves untouchable. Then came humanity, a relatively new entrant to the galactic stage. Humans had expanded rapidly, their colonies spreading across the stars at an unprecedented rate. They weren't the strongest species, nor the most technologically advanced, but they possessed something different. They adapted, they learned, and they refused to kneel. When the United Human Nations sought diplomatic relations with the Empire, it was seen as an act of naivety. The Empire did not negotiate, it dictated terms. Other species warned humanity that no one spoke to the Empire as equals. But humanity tried anyway. They extended a hand, offering trade, cooperation, and mutual growth. The Empire responded with contempt. Ambassador James Carter was the best humanity had to offer. A seasoned diplomat, he had brokered peace treaties between warring factions, navigated the complexities of interstellar politics, and held the respect of his peers. When he stepped into the Imperial Senate, he carried with him the hopes of an entire species. He never left alive. The Senate Hall, a towering monument of arrogance, was filled with representatives from hundreds of worlds. Carter stood before them, making his case with measured confidence. He spoke of cooperation, of a future where humanity and the Empire could coexist without conflict. Some listened, most sneered, and then, without warning, the Empire's enforcer moved. A towering figure clad in obsidian armor, the warlord was the embodiment of imperial brutality. Without hesitation, he seized Carter by the throat, lifting him effortlessly from the ground. The ambassador struggled, gasping for air, but the warlord's grip was unyielding. "You dare speak of peace," the warlord hissed, his voice carrying through the chamber. "You are insects pretending to be giants." Carter's face turned pale, his hands clawing at the unrelenting grip. The chamber remained silent. No one moved. No one interfered. Then came the snap. A sickening final sound. Carter's body went limp. The warlord let him drop to the polished floor. Lifeless, the Empire's ruler watched from his throne, expression unreadable. The warlord turned to the gathered representatives. "This is your lesson," he declared. "Humanity is nothing. And this is what happens to those who think otherwise." There was no outrage, no cries of protest. The other species in attendance merely looked away, unwilling to challenge the Empire's authority. Carter's body was left where it fell, a reminder of humanity's supposed insignificance. But what the Empire failed to understand was that they had not executed a man. They had ignited a war. The footage of Carter's murder spread across the galaxy within hours. It was more than just a video, it was a statement, a declaration that the Empire saw humanity as expendable, unworthy of even basic diplomacy. The message was clear. Humanity had no place in the Empire's future. Earth's response was immediate. The United Human Nations convened in a closed session. The air was thick with fury, grief, and something far colder. The Secretary-General's voice was steady, but her words burned. "They murdered an ambassador. They did it in cold blood. They believe we will kneel." She looked at the gathered officials, her eyes like steel. "They have made a grave error." There was no hesitation, no debate. Every human leader present knew what had to be done. The declaration was broadcast across every human colony, every fleet, every outpost. Effective immediately, the United Human Nations recognizes a state of total war with the Galactic Empire. There will be no negotiations, no treaties, no surrender. For centuries, the Empire had crushed its enemies without mercy. Now it was their turn to be afraid. The Empire barely acknowledged the declaration of war. To them, humanity was another insignificant species lashing out in defiance, a temporary nuisance that would be erased like so many before. Their fleets were vast, their armies numbering in the trillions. They had crushed rebellions, exterminated civilizations, and subjugated entire sectors without effort. They believed this would be no different. Then came the first strike. The Battle of Proxima Prime was meant to be a show of force, a quick and brutal reminder of the Empire's power. A fleet of Imperial warships descended upon the human-held colony, expecting surrender. Instead, they found themselves walking into a trap. The human fleet did not engage in a traditional battle. They did not fight by the Empire's rules. As the Imperial dreadnoughts moved into formation, they were met with silence. No response. No visible resistance. Then, without warning, their systems began to fail. Communications blacked out, targeting systems scrambled, propulsion shut down. Entire capital ships drifted helplessly as something unseen took control. Humanity had not spent their time amassing larger ships. They had spent it building smarter weapons. AI-driven cyber warfare, precision orbital strikes, and tactical EMP bursts turned the mighty Imperial fleet into floating wreckage within minutes. Before a single shot could be fired in retaliation, the first wave of human assault ships descended on the planet. What followed was not a battle. It was an execution. Human drop pods rained from the sky, deploying elite strike teams that moved with brutal efficiency. They did not fight in formations, did not waste time in prolonged engagements. Every strike was calculated, every movement designed to neutralize the enemy as quickly as possible. The Empire's forces, used to crushing inferior armies, were caught completely off guard. Their soldiers were trained for direct engagements, not asymmetric warfare. Humans moved like ghosts, striking from cover, using advanced targeting systems to eliminate officers and disrupt chain of command. Empire strongholds fell within hours. The planetary governor attempted to surrender. The humans ignored him. They did not come for negotiations. By the time the Empire realized what had happened, Proxima Prime was already lost. A fully established Imperial world, fortified and defended by an armada, wiped from their control in a single calculated strike. It was the first true defeat the Empire had suffered in centuries. Panic rippled through the Imperial Senate. This was not how wars were supposed to be fought. Their enemies were meant to break, to cower before their might. Humanity did neither. They did not beg. They did not falter. They struck with the cold, unrelenting precision of a species that had spent its entire history mastering warfare. And they were just getting started. Across the front lines, human fleets began deploying new tactics that the Empire had never encountered before. Guerrilla warfare in space, stealth-based infiltration units, AI-controlled drone swarms that overwhelmed Imperial defenses with mathematical precision. Entire supply chains were disrupted, communication relays sabotaged. The Empire's vast war machine, built for overwhelming direct conflict, struggled against an enemy that refused to fight on their terms. Desperation set in. The Empire responded with brute force, launching a massive counteroffensive against a human colony on the Outer Rim. Billions of civilians were slaughtered in retaliation. Cities were burned to the ground. It was a display of brutality meant to break humanity's will, to remind them of their place. Instead, it sealed the Empire's fate. There was no fear, no calls for peace, only a single transmission, broadcast from Earth to every fleet, every soldier, every colony. They believe they can break us. They believe we will kneel. Show them what happens when humanity stands. The war had only begun, and humanity had no intention of stopping. The Empire had underestimated humanity. That mistake had cost them Proxima Prime, dozens of warships, and an entire sector of space. Now they were beginning to realize the truth. This was not a rebellion. This was not a fleeting resistance. This was an extinction-level threat, and it had come for them. Human fleets moved with precision, striking deep into Imperial space, dismantling their infrastructure piece by piece. The Empire, built on absolute control, now found itself hemorrhaging resources. Their supply lines were in shambles, their communications disrupted, their forces divided. They had always relied on their overwhelming numbers to dominate the battlefield. But numbers meant nothing when every engagement ended in devastation. Humanity did not wage war the way other species did. They did not fight for conquest. They did not seek glory. They fought to end their enemy, to erase their capacity for retaliation. Every planet liberated was not merely taken, it was reshaped. Imperial garrisons were not driven out. They were eradicated. Human forces did not conquer cities. They reduced them to rubble if it meant ensuring their enemy could never return. Terror spread through the empire like wildfire. Entire fleets deserted rather than face humanity in battle. Mercenary factions, once loyal to imperial credits, abandoned their contracts, unwilling to challenge an enemy that fought with such ruthless efficiency. Even the empire's most hardened commanders began questioning their orders. Rumors spread of planets where human forces had landed, where resistance had been crushed before it could even form, of imperial officers who had been executed not for their actions, but for their allegiance, of prisoners who had surrendered only to be sent back to their homeworlds in pieces, a warning that humanity would accept no compromise. The emperor raged at the losses. He ordered entire sectors fortified, fleets pulled from distant campaigns to reinforce the core worlds. But it was already too late. Humanity was not simply fighting battles. They were rewriting the rules of war itself. They deployed new weapons, strategies never before seen in the history of the galaxy. Swarms of self-replicating drones that dismantled ships from the inside out. AI-driven warships that fought with inhuman precision. Biological warfare agents that targeted only imperial genetic markers, rendering entire planets uninhabitable to their own creators. And then came the psychological warfare. Human broadcasts flooded imperial networks. Not threats, not propaganda, simply the facts. Footage of human soldiers executing imperial officers. Entire cities burned to the ground in retaliation for massacres. Captured imperial commanders, hollow-eyed, confessing their war crimes before being silenced permanently. The empire had ruled through fear for centuries. Now, for the first time, they understood what it meant to be afraid. Then came the final blow, the assault on the imperial core worlds. Humanity had pushed the empire to the brink, forcing them to retreat to their innermost systems, their last bastions of power. Every other war they had fought had ended with their enemies begging for peace. This time, no such request came. Humanity had not sent demands. They had sent a simple message. We are coming. And the empire knew they would not survive. The final days of the empire were not marked by desperate last stands or heroic defenses. There was no grand strategy, no final hope. There was only inevitability. Humanity did not rush their victory. They dismantled the empire with methodical precision, stripping away its fleets, its infrastructure, its very ability to function. Imperial worlds fell one by one, not in glorious battles, but in systematic eradication. Supply chains collapsed. Military command centers were infiltrated and wiped out before orders could even be given. High-ranking officials were assassinated in their own palaces. The heart of the empire was crumbling, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. The imperial capital, once the shining jewel of the galaxy, became a ghost world. Once, billions had lived there, ruling over trillions. Now, the streets were silent, the sky darkened by the wreckage of fallen warships. The Emperor, once the most powerful being in the known universe, sat alone in his throne room, watching as his empire died around him. Humanity did not offer surrender. They did not broadcast terms of peace. There was no negotiation. They had not come to subjugate. They had not come to rule. They had come to erase the empire from existence. The final transmission from the capital world was brief. A single message, sent across all remaining imperial channels. It is done. And then silence. Across the galaxy, species that had once lived in terror under the empire's rule watched in stunned disbelief. The impossible had happened. The unbreakable had been broken. The masters of the galaxy had been reduced to nothing. But humanity did not celebrate. There were no victory parades, no speeches of triumph. They had not fought for glory. They had fought for justice, for vengeance, for the simple truth that no species had the right to decide the worth of another. With the empire gone, humanity did not seek to fill the void. They returned to their worlds, their fleets withdrawing, leaving only the ruins behind. They had no interest in ruling. They had made their point. No species would ever threaten them again. And the galaxy would never forget what happened when humanity went to war.